Good morning. Today is Monday, May 5th, 2025. This is the Urban Hope Refuge Morning Devotions. What a wonderful opportunity to begin the week under our theme and our devotion published by the American Bible Society under the theme God's Strengthening Word, Trusting in God's Promises. God's strengthening word, trusting in God's promises. I am reading from Exodus chapter 6, verses 28 through chapter 7, verse 13, in the New Living Translation. Verse 28. When the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, he said to him, I am the Lord. Tell Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, everything I am telling you. But Moses argued with the Lord, saying, I can't do it. I'm such a clumsy speaker. Why should Pharaoh listen to me? Chapter 7, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, pay close attention to this. I will make you seem like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. Tell Aaron everything I command you, and Aaron must command Pharaoh to let the people of Israel leave his country. But I will make Pharaoh's heart stubborn, so I can multiply my miraculous signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Even then, Pharaoh will refuse to listen to you. So I will bring down my fist on Egypt. Then I will rescue my forces, my people, the Israelites, from the land of Egypt with great acts of judgment. When I raise my powerful hand and bring out the Israelites, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded them. Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 when they made their demands to Pharaoh. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Pharaoh will demand, show me a miracle. When he does this, say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down in front of Pharaoh, and it will become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did what the Lord had commanded them. Aaron threw down his staff before Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh called in his own wise men and sorcerers, and these Egyptian magicians did the same thing with their magic. They threw down their staffs, which also became serpents. But then Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Pharaoh's heart, however, remained hard. He still refused to listen, just as the Lord had predicted. This concludes our devotional reading for today of Exodus chapter 6, verses 28 through chapter 7, verses 1 through 13. This is such a familiar passage of Scripture to so many of us. We learned it as children. We know the story of Moses and his encounters with Pharaoh as Moses was carrying out the call of God on his life. Exodus chapter 6, verses 28 through chapter 7, verse 13, marks a transitional moment in the narrative of Moses' mission to confront Pharaoh and deliver Israel from Egypt. This section underscores several things. One, being God's authority. Two, Moses' human weakness. And the beginning of the dramatic power struggle between God and Pharaoh. So we can see in the context of chapter 6, verses 28, 29, and 30, these verses revisit an earlier concern. Moses claimed in chapter 4, Moses claimed that his uncircumcised lips, he felt inadequate and unworthy to speak on God's behalf. So, this repetition emphasizes Moses' deep insecurity and reluctance because of his human self and what he considered to be his shortcoming. But as we can see, reinforcing the idea that God's mission does not depend on human eloquence, but on divine power. Moses felt he was inadequate to do what God was asking him to do. But listen, it simply sets the stage for God to act decisively despite Moses' weakness. Let me share with you very briefly. During my childhood, growing up in a small refuge church in Littleton, North Carolina, I witnessed a grown man who was a preacher of the gospel, but he was never taught to read. But listen, that grown man, that preacher who was never taught to read, could read any passage of the Bible that you placed in front of him. Don't ask me how. At one point I said, oh, he memorized that. No, take him to any passage, and he couldn't have memorized the entire Bible, I thought to myself. But any passage that you took him to, he could read it. God acts decisively despite our weaknesses. When he puts a call on your life, he acts decisively. So in Exodus chapter 7, verses 1 through 7, it gives us God's commission and God's strategy for Moses to accomplish what he had given Moses to do, although Moses felt that he was not adequate. God assures Moses, and he clarifies his plan. Moses will be like Pharaoh. excuse me, Moses will be like God to Pharaoh, and Aaron will be Moses' prophet or his spokesperson. God will harden Pharaoh's heart, but in doing so, he will multiply signs and wonders in Egypt. Like God indicates Moses will represent divine authority in his conversations and actions with Pharaoh, and Aaron will serve as Moses' mouthpiece. God foretells Pharaoh will resist. He told Moses he's not going to hear you. He's going to resist you. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart highlights that this confrontation is ultimately about God's power and God's glory, not so much about Moses. Verses 6 and 7 tells us Moses and Aaron obeyed just as the Lord commanded them. This marks the turning point in Moses' confidence that he could do what God told him to do. The simple fact that Moses and Aaron obeyed just as God commanded them. Wow, what does that say to us? What will our obedience do to God do for us? Because it marked a turning point for Moses. Listen, their ages. Moses was 80. Aaron was 83. And it shows to us that the calling on their lives from God came later in life for them. What does that emphasize? It emphasizes obedience over how young you are or how much ability you might have. The key is obedience. Exodus 7, 8 through 13 talks about the staff and Aaron throwing down his staff, and it turns to a serpent, and Pharaoh calls for his magic men, his sorcerers, to do the same. And I think it's important to understand here that the serpent had great significance in Egypt. A serpent was a powerful sign in Egypt. It symbolized power, it symbolized protection, and it symbolized royalty. So Pharaoh wasn't all that impressed. So what does this show us about the power of our great God as I'm closing? 1, divine sovereignty versus human resistance. God foretold Pharaoh's resistance, and he uses it to display his own power. There is human weakness, but there is also divine strength. Moses' fears were very real. They were very real, but listen, they did not hinder God's plan. There was the beginning of a cosmic conflict. It's a contrast between the true and living God and the false gods that Egypt knew. I have 1 minute. How do we apply this to our lives? Listen, number 1, God uses our weakness. Excuse me. God often chooses those who are aware of their limitations. I am so sorry. God uses those who are aware of their limitations to show that the power comes from Him, not from our human strength. Don't let fear, age, or perceived lack of ability keep you from saying yes to the call of God. His strength is made perfect in our weakness. Number two, obedience over comfort. Despite Moses' fear, he did just as the Lord commanded him. Obedience may not always seem easy or comfortable, but it positions us to be a part of God's redemptive plan. And I have to close with this. Number three, God's timing and plan are intentional. God says when life seems stuck or if opposition persists, it does not mean that God is not working. Some delays and resistance are part of a bigger plan to show God's glory in our lives. God's power outshines all others. This is God's strengthening word that we would trust in the promises that He has made to us. I pray that these words bless you today, and I challenge you as we go out throughout the rest of the week with our devotional. Pray your way through the day. Walk with the King and be a blessing.